Hypixel Skyblock is an MMORPG in Minecraft, where making money is pretty hard. It requires time, effort, leveling up skills, being smart with your purchases, getting lucky drops, investing in profitable markets, etc. And getting 1 billion coins can take weeks or even months of work, and most players never even get close to 1 billion even after 3 years of playing. And for reference, 1 billion coins is worth around $750 if you were to buy it in Skyblock gems. Now, what if I told you that a very small group of Skyblock players had over 1 trillion coins worth? That's around $750,000 in Skyblock gems. And what if I told you they lost all of it in a few minutes? For this video, we will dive deep into the story of one of those people that goes by the name of D4MIT or Dammit, and tell you how within only a few minutes, over 1 trillion coins was lost. Now, in order to understand how he lost all his net worth, we first need to take a look on how he gained all of his net worth. But even before we do that, I need to tell you to subscribe, as if we reach 200k subs before the middle of March, we would have gained 100k subs in 1 year. So help us reach that cool milestone by subscribing right now. It's a good investment because it's free. Anyways, D4MIT was always a pretty good Hypixel Skyblock player. He has been in the top Hypixel Skyblock guilds such as Lost Space, First Place Freds, and a few more, which are guilds that only allow the best of the best to enter them, and only the richest players are allowed in. Part of D4's net worth was from being very skilled at something that most people are not good at, and Skyblock players call that skill being lucky. D4 has a good history of making money off of things that lots of people see as pointless gambles, and even a way to lose all your money. He mainly did dragons and slayers. If you didn't know, in Hypixel Skyblock, you can spawn a dragon for around 8 million coins worth of dragon eyes, and after killing the dragon, you have a chance of getting a dragon pet, which sells for around 600 million coins. The chances of getting a pet are insanely low, and lots of people end up spending more than 1 billion coins before they get a dragon pet, which makes them sometimes lose double what they invested. But not for D4. He's gotten really lucky and somehow managed to get 10 Ender Dragon pets from dragons. Aside from dragons, he's also gotten quite lucky with Wolf Slayer, which has the same gambling mechanic of dragons. It costs 50,000 coins to spawn a tier 4 boss, and there's an astronomically low chance of getting an item from it that sells for 100 million coins called an Overflux Capacitor. D4 has again gotten pretty lucky with those and gotten multiple Overflux Capacitors, making him richer and richer. And same thing for Tarantula Slayer and Digested Mosquitoes. He even gotten 2 crazy rare drops in a row once, which is a drop some people never even get in their entire Skyblock playtime. That's how lucky he was. But what if I told you that all these things D4 did and his insane luck were only 1% of his net worth? But how is D4's extraordinary luck and his 2 years of playing Skyblock only 1% of his net worth, you may ask? Well, he didn't like auction flipping or bazaar flipping, so it wasn't him pulling a buy low sell high method, and he never market manipulated like nearly every billionaire on the leaderboard did to get there. So, what's the catch here? The single word answer is exotics. Now, what exactly are exotics? I'm glad you asked. Throwback to 2019 Skyblock, vanilla items used to be able to interact with custom Skyblock items. This means that people were able to dye their armor any color they wanted using dyes, just like in regular Minecraft. Back then, people mostly avoided dyeing their armor, because when you dyed your armor, it would lose quite a bit of its value, so the only people who would dye their stuff are people who didn't really mind losing 5 or 10% of the armor's value in order to have a cool full lime superior set instead of the normal yellow set. So back then, dyed armor was this thing not many people really wanted nor cared at all about. But vanilla items interacting with Skyblock items caused a magnitude of issues, like people being able to craft worthless normal diamond swords using very expensive material like enchanted diamonds, and caused a lot of accidental crafts that lots of people complained about. So, the admins decided to completely patch that and made Skyblock items and normal vanilla items never interact again, which made dyeing armor after November 11th, 2019 impossible. The other instance where exotics were obtained was through a bug, where on the first day of an update's release, the armor that requires another armor piece to be crafted retained the initial armor piece's color. Examples of this are Frozen Blaze, Bat, Shark Armor, and most importantly, Wither Armor. This bug existed for just a tiny bit of time, and not many people were able to abuse it quick enough, which resulted in very few of those exotic armor pieces existing. Around 2 years later in 2021 and 2022, Skyblock's economy had gotten massively inflated due to the mining update, and there were a lot of stupidly rich people who have dozens of billions of coins chilling inside their purse. And at that point, those people have had bought every single expensive item in the game multiple times, and they were bored. So, those people decided to start collecting rare items lost to time and offer ridiculous amounts of coins for them, and obtaining them and hoarding them became a competition between the top richest players. And in a non-coordinated way, exotics naturally shot up in price due to ridiculously high demand, and became more and more popular every day, especially after big YouTubers such as Refraction adopted the idea of exotics, and other YouTubers made videos about it. It even got to the point where people coded entire bots to automatically scan every single Skyblock player's inventories to check if they have exotics that they've been keeping since 2019 rotting inside their inventories, and of course, they offered to buy those. Keep in mind that exotics offer you absolutely nothing of gameplay value, and they give you the exact same stats normal armor gives you. And a large portion of Skyblock players use texture packs, so they wouldn't be able to tell the difference between a normal armor set worth 50 coins versus the same armor set with a different color worth 5 billion coins. And despite all that, the exotic community still had a very dedicated fanbase of people who don't care about extra stats and didn't use texture packs. So the value of the armor was only recognized by a small portion of insanely rich people in the community, which is what kept that community alive and drove the prices of everything nowhere but upwards. The concept of exotics is essentially called a market or economic bubble, and those happen all the time and dated back to 1637, with the Tulip Mania being one of the first recorded economic bubbles, and you can see them in modern day with the whole crypto and NFT stuff going around. So now after I told you all of this, you most likely assume that D4 had some crazy love for exotics and hoarded them ever since they were created, right? Not really. He only crafted like 1 or 2 sets back in 2019 for fun and never actually bought or invested in exotics. But his friend called Werpold did. Werpold was a friend of D4 and also was a massive sweat who happened to have an interest in collecting exotic armor sets before they were even called exotic armor sets and before they were selling for the millions they sold for today. But when they did eventually become popular and expensive, he decided to stick with them because the idea of unique colored armor sets was more appealing than billions of coins to him. And Werpold's favorite thing to do in Skyblock was grinding skills and dungeons for hours every day. Until he wasn't able to do that anymore. One day he woke up and found out that all of his skills across all of his profiles were wiped. Max level 50 and 55 of every skill was completely gone. The reason for his wipe wasn't very clear, and apparently it was false. Werpold was absolutely devastated about this. Now that his skills are all wiped, he isn't able to do the last thing he enjoyed doing in Skyblock, which was dungeons, and all of his items became useless. So, 1 week after his skill wipe, he decided to give all of his items to his best friend that he knew for 5 years, which was D4MIT. When he took possession of them from Werpold, the exotics market had already slightly started to form, and the items he had were worth a good amount, but not more than 20 billion coins. D4 didn't really care about the item's worth, and actually also quit shortly after and started playing other games and just focused on his life. And whilst D4 was gone, within a few months, the exotics market blew up. Items that were worth 500 million are now 10 billion. Things that were worth 10 billion are now 80 or even 100 billion. I even middleman trades that involved crazy amounts of coins, such as 45 billion for a few Black Storm pieces and 30 billion for a Lime Superior. And those were done a long time ago, and the value of those items had increased even more with time. With the very rapid explosion of exotics popularity, some people really hated them and went out of their way to buy them and void them, completely deleting insanely rare items from the game, which drove the prices up even more. And all of this meant that D4's armor, especially the Black Necron, that was just sitting in his ender chest, was going up in price by the billions each day, and he owned pieces only very few others owned. And the people in the exotics community estimated his net worth to be somewhere between 200 and 300 billion, and so was the case for every other exotic collector who had similar armor pieces as D4. They individually had a net worth of at least 100 billion each. But on March 1st, 2022, all of this became in the past tense. On that date, something happened that not a single person expected. Remember how I previously told you that the bot for crafting exotics was patched a long time ago? Well, this wasn't the case for around 1 hour on March 1, 2022. After the Hypixel admins released the final Master Mode of Warfare dungeons, they added a bunch of new items, but what they also mistakenly added was the bot that lets you craft exotics. Essentially, whenever you craft any armor piece that requires another armor piece to craft, it retained the color of the first piece, which was deemed as the rarest and most expensive type of exotics. People were very easily able to craft Black Storm armor, which was the most expensive type of exotics, alongside a bunch of other insanely rare kind of exotics. So exotic variants for Bats, Frozen Blaze, Shark and Wither armor were easily obtainable once again. I don't know who exactly started it, but it was believed that the person who first found out about the bot pinged his Discord server and screen shared himself doing the bot to around 20 people, which then those people told other people in the biggest Skyblock guilds about it. And after that, for a few minutes, hell broke loose. For the very few minutes that this bot was out for, each time someone uses it to craft rare exotics, the net worth of D4 and the people who owned those pieces would be split in half.
It's a storm chestplate! Hey yo, what the f...
But that was the first part of the disaster of March 1st. To add insult to injury, the admins also released special armor dyes into the game, so people can dye armor any colors they wanted. Despite admins saying that dyed armor will have a unique symbol that distinguishes it from original exotics, that day was still pretty rough for people in the exotics community, and lots of the top exotics collectors stated that they've lost so much motivation because of what's happened and don't even care much anymore about exotics. And honestly, I respect that. Of course, their statements come off as them just trying to cope with it, but the best thing you can do when hundreds or thousands of hours of your hard work were just burned off within few minutes is to try and cope with what's happened and not live in denial forever, especially since there is nothing you can really do about it. Things in this world have value, usually because they have a use to us. This remains true in Skyblock as well, as armor sets and weapons are useful for progression, and as a result, the better things tend to fetch a higher price. This idea of value through usefulness is known as an item's intrinsic value, and there is no real way an item can lose this without being changed. Exotics, on the other hand, have no more intrinsic value than a base item, and as a result, get their value from extrinsic value, or what these items are worth to individual people. For some people, It's the idea of having a unique item or something to flex that nobody else has, which is completely fine. But for an increasing number of people, this extrinsic value comes from the profit they can make from holding onto these items and selling them for higher prices later on. This causes problems, as extrinsic value is easily manipulated by artificially limiting the supply of items or increasing the demand through advertising the idea of exotics through huge servers or videos like these. This idea of inflated value is known as a bubble and tends to form when a majority of people who own a rare item of some sort use and trade it purely for profit and not for its intrinsic value. Essentially, everyone trades something completely worthless with the idea that it will have more value to somebody else in the future. This is the same principle that cryptocurrencies and NFTs operate on, and just like bubbles, they eventually pop, usually when something loses its exclusivity or somebody decides to cash out their investment to the detriment of everybody else. This phenomena has been experienced throughout history, but was most notably written about in the 1850s by Karl Marx, who said, quote, "The market value of assets can be driven up and artificially inflated, purely as a result of supply and demand factors, which can themselves be manipulated for profit. The inflated value can just as rapidly be punctured if large amounts of capital are withdrawn, and in this case, the exclusivity bubble was burst before anybody could cash out. And now that the top exotics collectors have lost a lot of interest in exotics, the prices took a massive dip. Before March 1st, 2022, owners of those exotics would have been able to cash out and sell their stuff and would have gotten a total value of over 1 trillion coins. Finding the buyers wouldn't be very easy, but it was doable. But after March 1st, there is no way they could even find a buyer for any of those pieces for that kind of prices anymore, especially since they are everywhere on the auction house for all sorts of prices now. And that's how 1 trillion coins, $750,000 in Skyblock gems, essentially turned into nothing. Maybe a very, very small fraction of what it used to be. And all of that within only a few minutes. Surprisingly enough, after waking up to over 200 pings from people and hearing the news that he is no longer one of Skyblock's richest players, D4 was not really bothered about it. He always said that he wasn't going to sell the armor pieces for any price at all, especially since it was a gift from his best friend. Sure, it does suck that his own unique items are no longer unique anymore, but to him, they still are. And due to that mentality, he was able to get past this awful event relatively quickly. If there's any value to the story other than giving me watch time and you having something to watch whilst you eat breakfast, it's that learning to let go of things is very important. I didn't mention this yet, but I witnessed a few very bad mental breakdowns of some exotic collectors upon discovering that a year or two of their hard work collecting rare items simply vanished within minutes, which really left me thinking. One could say that it's their fault for putting so much work into a very fragile concept in a video game that's inside a video game. But in my opinion, I think the fact that you can pursue something you are passionate about, whether that's collecting rare things or making a massive in-game profit off of them inside a video game, is something really nice. But just like the real world, when you become obsessive about something, whatever that thing might be, it slowly becomes really bad for you. Anyways, I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you made it till the end, then you might as well subscribe and like the video. Big thanks to Dammit or D4MIT for personally telling me all the info related to his and Whirlpool's story. And as always, I hope to see you again soon, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day.